I use a program that was developed by Sean Foyer out of Salt Lake City called the Inner Blueprint. And basically it focuses on what do you want? What do you want out of life? What are you missing out on? Not what you think you can have, not what you deserve or think you deserve, not what you've done thus far, but what do you really want?
Today on the We Share podcast, we are joined by licensed clinical social worker Michael Hartley. We talk attachment styles, subconscious cues, and learn about his book, The Work of Being Human, 30 Years in the Therapy Room. Welcome to the We Share podcast. I'm Julie.
I'm Alex.
We share ourselves and we provide a platform for others to share.
We believe everyone has a purpose and a story to tell.
And we're back on the We Share podcast. I'm Julie.
And I'm Alex.
And as we jump into February, we're going to take care of our heart, which happens in a lot of different ways. So our guest today is going to help us take care of our heart. With our mental wellness.
Yes, like layering that in, the mindset, your need for total wellness where the heart combines with the mind and the mental psyche. So introducing Mike Hartley. He is a licensed clinical social worker with over 30 years in the making. He recently launched a book called The Work of Being Human. So 30 years in the therapy room, and we're excited to have you here, Mike.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
I think there's a thing about being educated and a thing about being wise, and now you're both. 30 years of working in the field brings the wisdom, and then you have the education and combine that, and we've got a lot to learn from you.
That's great to hear. I never really thought about it that way, but that's awesome.
Yeah, Julie is a master of tying things together.
Well, Mike, tell us about yourself. How did you get in this field?
So, I've thought about that a lot over the years. Tragically, my father was killed in a car accident before my mom and dad even knew that they were pregnant, right? And so my mom raised me on her own for a few years, and I had a great set of grandparents there. But I developed, in my older years, I figured out that I kind of developed a little bit of abandonment issues, I think, even though, no fault of my father. My mom did the best she could. She did a great job. But as I got into more mature relationships growing up and realizing that I did have a little bit of a different mindset or a look at the way that I interacted with people.
Would you say it's just a survival?
Yeah, it was
tactic?
survival. I think I hung on too tightly. I was, just like glommy, if you will, just kind of always trying to hold on too tight and pursue things too quickly. And I think over time I realized that was because I was fearful of losing things, that'd be taken away from me. Even though I didn't experience the death, I think as my mind grew and I kind of figured out, my cognitions matured, if you will, I figured out that, I had a real issue with worrying about people leaving me. So that's, in a nutshell, it kind of got me interested in psychology and interested in, this whole side of things, that what makes our mind work, what makes us think the way we do. And I tied the way we currently work to our history and ways that we grew up and attachment issues and those kind of things.
So was there one moment like that, were you in a class or you heard a story that you can remember that you thought, that is it?
People have asked me that before, and I don't recall a specific cathartic moment where I was like, aha, I figured it out. But I think just through lots of psychology courses and social work courses, I realized over time that, wait a minute, and I think working with patients over the years and clients and seeing abandonment and attachment issues in them, I could kind of relate it to myself and say, okay, yeah, I'm seeing this.
Yeah, I've mentioned this to the podcast audience before, but I had a 2.5-pound baby. It was my last of my 3. Wow. And I spent 8 weeks away from my other 2 in Utah because that was the only way she was going to survive if we went to Utah for her care. And it was discovered in her mid-20s that my 3-year-old felt abandoned. She was plenty loved. She was with grandma. People were taking care of her, but that stuck with her similar to what it stuck with you. And then that started to manifest later in her life.
Right. Our central nervous systems pick up on things that we're not aware of, right? I mean, our minds are super powerful and our bodies react accordingly. And, so I think even at 3 years old, that's when we develop attachment styles, ironically, is right around 3 years old, 2 to 3. And, there's terms for that. It's selective attachment versus reactive attachment. Selective attachment means people care for us where we feel secure in the attachments we make. Sometimes when those attachments don't form or we're separated from that attachment, we can develop attachment issues. Yeah.
Very interesting. So as you discovered this in yourself, how did you then find solutions that you turned around and helped other people with attachment?
Sorry. Yeah. I think it just, the way that I did that, I think I just really dove deep into attachment styles, abandonment issues, imposter syndrome. I mean, a lot of those things that they're kind of catchphrases nowadays. It all stems back to how we attach. And it was amazing to me how in our adult lives, the way we interact in our romantic lives, in our interpersonal lives, with our family, with our friends, it's all based on, the way that we feel about ourselves and the way that we attach to other people. And so that's kind of what got me interested in this work. And that's when I kind of dove deep into it and figured it out.
Like the root cause, really. Like the root cause is attachment.
Yeah.
How many of if you were going to give of 30 clients, how many of them struggle with something that's similar to attachment issues? Do you see it a lot?
Probably 30.
Really?
Yeah, it's very prevalent. And I think depending on the therapist or the psychologist or, the clinician you talk to, it's prevalent throughout any diagnostic criteria, not any type of mental health disorder. That you can always find some type of attachment issue tied to that.
I agree, because I've just watched it work in my own experiences or helping others. And because really everyone can trigger you differently. So say you have a workplace situation, I would attach differently than like a interpersonal relationship with someone in my family. But I know, from things I've studied too, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, like all these different ones, you can be both in different situations, which is crazy.
Absolutely.
Maybe you should explain that for our listeners.
No,
I don't want to. You're the professional, but I just witnessed it.
Well, I think we behave differently, like you said, in different situations. If we find, if you find a relationship that you're really interested in, and you have, a reactive attachment issue, you're going to really grasp onto that because you're very interested in maintaining that relationship. A friend or a work, a colleague, you may not be so attached to them. You may not have such a buy-in or an interest in that relationship. And so if you were to lose it, it wouldn't be as detrimental or devastating. And so, yeah, I think sometimes you're right, exactly right. If we find a relationship that we're very interested in or that we're somehow drawn to, sometimes when we have attachment issues, we really grab onto that.
Hold on too tight.
Too
maybe?
tight. Yeah. And you hear about it all the time, right? I mean, the boyfriend that's too aggressive towards the relationship, not in a physical way, but in just,
more of the chase.
Yeah. And then there's also the opposite way. There's people that are afraid of becoming too attached, and they avoid, that avoidant personality kind of issue.
Do you see people purposely sabotage relationships because they're worried about the attachment?
Absolutely. All the time. You hear phrases like, I'm having a mind block right now. It's a personality disorder, but
either I feel like I know them all. Bipolar or
so there's a type
borderline
of personality disorder, exactly. And it's funny that it escapes me because it's very prevalent.
It is prevalent. I just hate using labels because I'm always like, everyone is everything. Like at different times. Yep. And so I'm like, let's not label each other. And I just hate labels, but they're real.
And we diagnose ourselves way too often, right? But yeah, personality disorders are, have attachment-based roots, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, absolutely.
So interesting. So tell us a little bit more about your career, because I'm sure it has evolved as you've learned more. And you had mentioned to us before we went to recording that you're using a new what would I call it? Like a platform?
A coaching platform for mindset.
Yeah.
So walk us through that. How did you get to that point, and what is that mindset?
So I started out in therapy doing cognitive behavioral type work, right? And that's kind of a catchphrase. Everybody knows what cognitive behavioral therapy is, right? The way we think is the way we feel is the way we act. And I did that for a very long time. I mixed that with a type of therapy called existential therapy, which is a therapy where basically it states that there are 4 ultimate concerns in our life. We're afraid of 4 major things. That's death, isolation, meaninglessness, and freedom. And so I worked in that arena for many, many years. I had a business in Idaho Falls for about 18 years, and then I sold it about 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago maybe now. And what really interests me about this new realm, it's called mindset coaching or mindset mentoring, is I don't focus as much now on diagnostic stuff. I don't focus so much on what happened to you. I don't focus so much on what I'm more interested in is working with people because it's a given. We all know we have something. We all know we have either
some
attachment
sort of
issue.
trauma.
Trauma, exactly. And so now I focus less on what should we do to go regressively and figure out what happened and how do we deal with that and how do we cope with that? I'm more focused now on, yes, it happened, and yes, it hurt, but let's focus on what we're doing right now for it. Let's focus on what we can do to make our future better. And so don't get me wrong, I still focus on, things that happened. They're important, but I'm not so historically based or focused anymore. I'm more looking towards future mindset, what we want really out of life. I work in a program, or I use a program that was developed by Sean Foyer out of Salt Lake City called the Inner Blueprint. And basically it focuses on what do you want? What do you want out of life? What are you missing out on? Not what you think you can have, not what you deserve or think you deserve, not what you've done thus far, but what do you really want? What's your goal? What's your North Star? Right? And we always say, don't worry about the how for now. Just focus on what do you want financially, health and fitness, health and wellness, relationships, starting with the relationship with yourself, first and foremost, which we all kind of overlook. So what do you want in those areas? And we'll figure out how to get there.
I like it. That's so good because you just do write it down, journal it, and then reverse engineer it.
Yeah. It's almost like manifesting a little bit.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go over the 4 things that you said, specifically freedom. So we're all scared of meaningless, death, freedom,
isolation,
and isolation. Okay. The first 3 totally make sense to me. Explain freedom.
Freedom it's kind of a misnomer in an existential sense. Freedom means we don't have an infrastructure. We don't have a blueprint. Nobody's going to tell us once we turn 18, right? Nobody tells us what to do. Like you and I talked earlier about a family member. There is no blueprint for where you go in life. So we have the freedom, which sounds great, to make our own choices, to make our own money, to be in the relationships we want to be in. But that's scary.
Yeah, there's fear in freedom because you're like, wait, there are a lot of people, and we all know some that they are happy being told what to do. And like, this is what, I would say even from an early age growing up in the religion I did, that I was very much like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this in this order. And I had my life figured out. And then you hit your first hurdle or hiccup where things don't go as planned. And you're like, wait a minute.
This looks like a multi-car pilot.
Yes. Exactly. Religion is a great example of a construct that has been developed or that people use to kind of guide their life, give them that blueprint. Yeah. And there's many others, social groups and clubs, like a Kiwanis or an Eagles or an exchange club. You like that structure. As human beings, we enjoy that structure. And
right, because we're social animals. We are meant to not be alone, right? And be around other people. Yeah,
exactly. In fact, that's the first chapter in my book. Is we're not meant to be alone, right?
Love it.
We need that attunement, that attachment. We need that social interaction.
Yes, that's why God created Eve.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Do you know what's so interesting is I'm thinking back in a previous job, this was years ago, I would watch these students go to a place where they were almost complete with their education, and they would be good at at their chosen field, and then they would just quit. They would bail out with just a few months left. And I always assigned it to they were scared to be successful, but maybe it's they were scared to have the freedom.
Yeah.
School meant there was this structure. I have to show up at this time and I do these assignments. And if I graduate, I have to go out and actually make this education work for me. And they might have been scared of that freedom.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I could see that. I do know a few perpetual students have like a couple doctorates, and you're like, how are you ever going to pay off your debt, your school debt? Because there's so many like degrees.
But school is very understandable and structured, so that does make sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. Of those four, what do you see people struggle with the most?
The most obvious one is death, right? I mean, we all kind of have that mortality issue, but freedom, ironically, is the one that I see because people don't recognize that it's a concern, right? Meaninglessness. That I mean, what are we here for? What's my purpose? What's my legacy? That's pretty common. Isolation, like we said a few minutes ago, we all have that need to connect. But freedom is something that people don't quite understand, you know. And we do. I think on some level we do, but the word freedom sounds great. I mean, it's what our nation's based on, right?
Right. I was going to say there's probably just so much weight to the word freedom because, for instance, like politics, Julie talks about all the time in news talk, but when the U.S. or the world is in crisis, things are happening, you know, abroad, war, we're sitting here helpless, really. What do you do? And we can think for a minute that our liberties could be taken away, or what would that mean for us? Now, someone in Afghanistan learned early on what lack of freedom is, or they've lived a completely different life than us. But we've had, for most part, here in the U.S., we've had our freedom. And so wondering if that could be taken away, and that's fear-based. I know a lot of things happened since 2020 that have made a lot of people afraid and fear losing freedom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or the freedom that comes with jobs and a good economy, when all of a sudden, like, economy is not there and the money's not there and everything costs more. And you're like, well, now I am not free to go buy things and spend my money the way I needed to. I have to just bare bones budget. So I think there's a lot of
so
layers
much
to
different
freedom.
levels of fear built in around freedom. Yeah. Do you think just about anybody could benefit from therapy?
You know, I don't know why not. You know, in my training, in my schooling, in my graduate work, a lot of our professors either required or recommended that we go, you know, at least to a few sessions just to kind of get a feel for, you know, what it feels like, what it looks like. But I think most of us benefit from opening up our minds to the idea of we can improve. We can focus on certain areas that maybe we struggle in, even if we feel like we're doing well, which most of us do, right? We all kind of skate through life and we make our happiness and we figure out ways to stay in tune with our environment. But I don't ever feel like there's anything wrong with going to therapy. For sure, don't wait until a crisis happens, right? I mean, sometimes we, and unfortunately, especially men, men tend to wait until,
that's true.
If you rub some dirt on it, you should be okay. But then I've worked with lots of men, veterans, first responders, people in high positions, here locally that just waited too long because by then it was broken, right? Or they felt like it was broken.
Yeah, I definitely would say there's more societal pressure on men, and then women, we just vomit all over each other all the time, right?
In not a great way.
Like, no, but like sometimes it's just like, I think we're more emotional at times and we can purge, but then the men are carrying that around, and it's not to like pigeonhole, one sex against the other, because I think there's crossover. But on the whole, I would say females were better at talking it out with our girlfriends and maybe not talking about what we need to talk about with who we should be talking.
Yeah.
to.
Or getting really good direction in helping you be empowered and coming to solutions. Sometimes when we get together with just a group of friends, all we do is mire in the muck.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on the type of friend.
Yeah, you've got to have the right kind of friends for a healthy, positive outcome to come from that sharing of feelings. And hopefully, if you're doing it in therapy, you have a really qualified therapist who has your best interest at heart.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been a therapist junkie my whole life.
That's why you're doing so well.
I was dragged in early by my mom for things that, were going on in our family. And I, from a very early age, felt that it was important to be able to talk and share. And I, in fact, initially went to college for social work.
Interesting.
But I found out I wasn't strong enough for that calling. I needed something more superficial, literally.
Well, that brings up something. Do you ever feel like you have exceeded the shelf life of this profession? Because I think it can be very heavy for the professional.
I'm not sure why, but early on, I developed kind of a ritualistic, I guess you'd say, approach to when I leave my office. And so I've developed.
Yep.
You're familiar with that.
Well, that was why I quit the program. Oh. I think I've told Julie about that before. It was just BYU first core social work class. I'm in the program, and we have to watch this horrific. I still have PTSD from these children and the abuse and things that were happening. And at the end of the class, the professor flips the lights on and he's like, if you cannot leave this in this classroom and you're going to take this home with you, this is not for you. This major's not for you. And I went straight to the counselor and I'm like, I'm traumatized. I would take it home and it would affect every layer. And so I switched to advertising. Here we are, marketing.
There we
are. You are. There you are. No, but I think it's very real. I've supervised and I've employed therapists in the past that really did have a hard time with hanging on to what they hear in the day. I don't think it makes you insensitive if you're able to separate and kind of compartmentalize your personal life from your work life, or in other words, not carry that home.
I think it's a skill and a gift.
Yeah, I think I'm just super fortunate that I've been able to do that through the years. I do recall many, I've lost patients and clients to suicide, and I've been fired obviously from clients that didn't like me or like my method.
Blending.
Yes, and I've heard some really, like you said, child endangerment issues and assault. And, veterans have always been a soft spot for me. I work a lot with veterans and law enforcement. There's just so much in the world that a lot of us don't see, or that we maybe
I'm thankful for. I love the bubble.
The bubble's great. I live in a bubble when I go home. So, but yeah, I think it is a skill, and I'm very fortunate that I've been able to do that over my career, is be able to turn that off as I walk out of my office.
Yeah, we've had other child therapists and different members from different organizations in town, and they've mentioned that sometimes they have to take a break or shift focus for a little bit.
Right.
Because they need to just
the burnout level would be very high.
Right. And I think a lot of it, too, is your support system. Like, I have marvelous children, a fabulous wife, people that support me and stand behind me. And I've always been a friend guy. I've always really sought out having good friends, and I have great friends. And I think that's my coping mechanism, and the way that I get out of that is I turn to my wife, my kids, my grandkids, my friends. So I'm very well supported, and I'm fortunate for that way.
I would say it has to be pretty rewarding, though, for the people you have helped. That keeps you in it, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. And I run into people all the time that I've seen professionally, and I always tell people in therapy, in the session room, if I see you in public, I'm not going to say a word. So don't think that I'm rude. I'm just not going to out you. But all the time I have people come up to me and just shake my hand or give me a hug and, say it's really good to see me. And that is very gratifying. You can't help everyone. And I don't assume that everybody I see is, miraculously has their life changed. But there are many that I am fairly fortunate enough to have worked with that I feel really good about.
Right.
So.
One of my favorite therapy messages I've received, and then I've shared it with other just women and people I've talked to, is really everything you have is inside of you. And as a therapist, you're just being that facilitator to help them figure it out.
Absolutely.
And
peel back the layers.
Yeah.
And when that light bulb moment goes off, then they can realize, like, I can do this. I can. And so that's like a little bit of the magic that happens.
It really is. My job is not to provide ideas or solutions. It's to help you find your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also like it. You're referring to these people in the past tense, which means they graduated from you.
Yes.
And that, for me, means that it worked.
Yes.
Like the good things occurred, and the person just needed that little help to get to that good place with what was inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I always call it a safe space, and that's all it is, right? People ask me all the time, what theory do you use? How do you do this? What did you have to learn to be a therapist? And really, I don't want to oversimplify it, but sometimes just having a safe space and somebody that creates that space for you and that listens and that is empathic and provides support and maybe an idea here and there, as far as what we're hearing or what we're listening to. Really, that's the biggest part of being, I think, a supportive therapist, is just providing that space and safety.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I know.
Like a listening is everything, and validation, that they just want to be heard.
Right.
Yeah. How do people get a hold of you? Are you currently taking clients with your new program?
I am. I keep some appointments open. I work over on Washington Parkway, so I have an office here in town. And, the easiest way to get a hold of me is either through a telephone number or my website or stopping in or, there's email, any of those. I'm reachable through any of those.
So go ahead and share those.
Let's see if I can remember my Google number. It's 208-557-1878. My website is hartleymindset.com, and my email is mike@hartleymindset.com.
Hartley is spelled Hartley.
Correct.
I'm reading it off
I know,
of his,
like Matters of the Heart Month,
yeah,
but just spelled a little differently.
A little bit differently. And then tell us a little bit more about the book, because I want people to be able to go and find that.
Yeah, let's share maybe a little bit of your book without giving too much of it away.
Absolutely. So basically, I've kept pretty good notes over the last many years, and just for the regulators, they're safe. They're HIPAA compliant. They're all double locked up. But I read through. I started maybe 6-8 months ago. I started reading through some old case notes and just through some things that I wrote down during sessions, and I realized there's a lot of commonality throughout the years of with people that I've worked with. And I had this idea. I've always kind of thought I'd write a book, or I pushed through the imposter syndrome of who am I to write a book. But so I sat down one night. It was really early in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and I started jotting down, some commonalities between clients and between, as we call them, diagnostic criteria and things like that. And I just kind of formulated an outline for what I wanted to address. The book is basically a history of 30 years in the therapy room, and what I correlate a lot of the world can kind of relate to in their own life, and how therapy has helped other people, kind of combat those issues. But I write a lot about attachment issues. I write a lot about depression. I write a lot about imposter syndrome. The way that we react to our environment. And then the latter part, probably the second half of the book, is just ways and ideas to overcome some of these things and overcome some of the demons we deal with every day, ways that we can change our mindset and improve our outlook, and just kind of really common sense, bare bone ways to change the way that we feel about ourselves. That kind of throughout the book, I talk about how we operate out of our subconscious, probably about 95% of the time. And our ideas and our self-limiting beliefs that we have in our subconscious were put there by somebody else. We weren't born with those beliefs.
No.
Right? And so every time we were made fun of in school or our parents were killed in a car accident or somebody left us or we were disappointed or somebody offended us, we put that into our subconscious as a self-limiting belief. Our body, our central nervous system wants us to be safe. And so we have something come up that our brain recognizes and said, last time we experienced this, it hurt, or we were embarrassed, or we were offended, or we became irritable. So let's just avoid that altogether, right? And so it's much like driving a car. You know, when you pull into a parking lot, you don't really think about pulling into a parking lot. You've done it 100 times. Our brain keeps us safe through helping us avoid situations that might cause us harm.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I did like how you said you start out with stories. Is there one in particular you could share, like one of the stories?
Yeah, I think I named him John.
Okay.
In the book. I can't remember exactly. There's a bunch of vignettes in there, but in the book, and I'll keep it the way it is so I don't disclose any identifying information, but an old cowboy came into session, and at the behest of his wife, I'm sure, he had kind of, he had dusty boots and the Wranglers and the cowboy hat, and probably an atypical client, right? And in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, this should be interesting.
A tough nut to crack.
So the last ditch effort, like you will go to counseling.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's where we were at.
Exactly. His issue was he wasn't open to, as you can imagine, an older cowboy. He wasn't open to emotionality. He wasn't open to relating with his partner in a way that she kind of wanted him to, right? They'd raised kids. They had done everything they were supposed to. They were fairly affluent. I mean, they had money. But as the kids aged out, as the kids grew up and moved out, he and his wife all of a sudden just stopped getting along as well. In other words, they had to relate.
Wasn't enough distractions anymore.
So
all the commonalities were gone.
Exactly. And so they basically, I had to help John, as we call him, reinvent who he is and open up to the world of believing that emotions are not foreign. They're not weak. They're not, anything that we should avoid. All his wife was asking for was just some relationship, integrity, just wanting to relate to him. And it took it took several weeks for him to break down enough to where he thought, maybe I do have an issue with being standoffish or stonewalling or protecting my emotions because that makes me weak. Like I mentioned before, men are typically not good at breaking down those walls and those barriers.
No, because we need you to be strong.
Right.
Keep us safe and provide
yes.
all the things.
It's a lot of expectations on men.
Right. But, the gap, I try to narrow the gap between male and female, right? Men and women. I know that there are roles. I know that biologically we're different. I understand all of that. But fundamentally, emotionally, mentally, I feel the gap can be, narrowed, especially in relationships.
We can all do it all.
Right.
But it's just, we all are better at doing some things than I'd rather not do it all. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
But if I have to, I can,
Sure.
and I think that is everyone. I think there are many men I know that are very in touch with their emotions and deliver great, contributions to life and society.
Right.
But I think that's a lot of hope because if the grizzled old cowboy can soften up and create health within his relationship,
right?
Anybody can do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Yeah, it was actually he had a really great outcome, and I was very excited for the way that he kind of discovered himself.
Evolved.
I bet his wife was more excited.
Yeah.
I'm sure she was.
Yeah.
I'm sure she was.
Can we end on a personal note? Did your mother remarry? Did you end up with a father figure?
Yes. A wonderful man. And in fact, sadly, he passed away recently.
Oh, we're sorry.
Yeah. But he was a wonderful man. I believe, if I recall, I was 4 when my mom remarried, and he treated me as his own. He treated me, I'm the oldest, obviously, but I remember vividly one day in school realizing that my last name was different than my siblings, and I didn't know why. And I remember I cried. I couldn't figure out why my last name was different, and so I had a conversation with my mom, and my dad reassured me, hey, you're just
every bit
one of my
mine.
own.
Yeah.
So it was great. She did remarry, and I had a wonderful upbringing. Don't have anything to complain about at all. She did.
That's lovely.
It was great.
So I want to also end on like one of your golden nuggets. So you shared the stories, but then towards the end, there's going to be your tools that you were saying.
Right.
Give us some tools. So what is one like Mike Hartley tool like that you just...
Absolutely. E+R equals O.
Okay.
So the way that in fact, I wear a wristband every day with E+R.
I'm like writing this down.
I should have brought you both a wristband. Next time.
Let's say it slow again for our listeners. E plus R equals O.
Equals O. E stands for event, and we all know that most of the time we don't have any control over what happens to us in life, right? R stands for response. Typically, I think the author of this terminology, I think he used reaction.
Right.
But I use response. Reaction is kind of
a negative, more term,
a knee-jerk reaction to an event. It's almost like it's on autopilot. You don't have much control over it. I use the word response, meaning the way that we choose to respond.
It had thought behind it.
Yeah.
Well, and it shows autonomy.
Autonomy.
Yes.
Exactly. That's exactly right. O stands for outcome. So the way that we respond to the events in our life, it sounds super simple, right? But the way that we respond to the events in our life directly impacts our outcome. And then we go back to that 95% thing. Our subconscious is going to respond or react to the event the same way every time unless we change it. And so I work with people a lot on their response, working in that 5% of the conscious, right? That conscious mind. Let's reframe and redirect the way that our subconscious works. And the way I do that is simply through, I know it's a woo-woo and a catchphrase, but self-affirmations, worthy goals, teaching ourselves through repetition that we can rebuild our subconscious. We can change the way that we just normally think on a daily basis by using our conscious and repeating good things, positive things, and looking for the goodness in life, just rebuilding that subconscious.
Yeah. Like I'm slow clapping and then hard, like round of applause, all the things with all of that.
That thought.
Yeah.
I think we used to think it was woo-woo, but we've got studies coming out of Stanford. We've got that show the way that you frame the thoughts in your mind make all of the difference.
Absolutely.
And also take it like victim mentality. So when you are able to go back and reframe, you can actually look at how you contributed to that. Like, wait, my response because of that event produced this outcome, and I could have done better. And so when you take that ownership, then you can like let that wash over you and okay, now next time. And that's where the true, I think, test comes in, is when you're in that situation again, choosing a different response, choosing a better outcome, essentially, for yourself. You have more control than you think.
Absolutely.
And you don't need to be scared of freedom.
No.
Don't need to be scared of freedom.
Yeah.
We need to outro. I'm free to do what I want.
Right. Okay. Let everyone know again the title of your book and where they can find it.
The book is called The Work of Being Human, 30 Years in the Therapy Room. Right now it's on sale on Amazon. If you just search the title, Work of Being Human, or my name, Michael Hartley, You can find it.
Add to cart.
Yeah, I self-published, so I didn't want to go through the hassle. I wanted to get it out there. I'm not a very patient human being sometimes. But yeah, give it a try. I get good feedback. My wife told me it's great, but she has to, right?
Well,
but I've gotten
if she wants the outcome that is best for her.
That's her reaction or her response.
Yeah.
But I've had colleagues that I sent it out to just as kind of a peer review, colleagues in the mental health field that have said that they thought it was really good. So I hope it is. I'd like my goal is just that it resonates with folks in this world, in this country, in this nation, in the world, and that they, are able to benefit from learning how to just kind of change the way they look at life, and maybe it'll help them improve some area or in some way.
I think they will, and community is what we're about, and sharing stories and all the things. So we appreciate you very much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. And
I know my heart's better after this 40 minutes, so thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you invited me. I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on the We Share podcast.
If you've loved what you've heard, please give us a 5-star rating, tell your friends, and share this show.
You can also follow us for recipes, lifestyle and fashion tips, book reviews, and more on WeSharePodcast.com.
Join our Share Squad and sign up for our newsletter there.
We would love to connect with you.
We share on TikTok, Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram. Give us a follow.
A big goodbye squeeze and sending you all our love from Alex and Julie.
Join us next week on the We Share podcast.